Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today I have with me Katrina Weberg, and she is actually the Director of Finance and Operations for ACT Missouri. So welcome, Katrina.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit today because many of you know Katrina, you've worked with her, she's helped you out with some financial stuff. And through the years, we've talked about how nonprofits differ from like an individual or more of a corporate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So Katrina, how is tax season different for exempt organization versus the individual taxpayer?
Yes, tax season does look different for nonprofit organizations versus the individual filer. The individual filer's tax season usually runs from around the 1st of February to April 15th, tax deadline. And most tax exempt organizations are required to file an annual return, but it depends on their organization's financial activity, and also the due date depends on when their fiscal year ends.
Okay, good. And what are the filing responsibilities of an organization who's exempt from income tax?
So an organization that is required to file an exempt organization information return must file what they call Form 990, which is called the return of organization exempt from income tax. And so if your gross receipts are less than 200,000 and your total assets are less than 500,000, then you can file what they call the 990EZ, which is a short form of the same return of organization exempt from income tax.
Okay, great. And are there exceptions for small exempt organizations?
Yes, actually there is an exception for organizations whose gross receipts fall less than $50,000. And those organizations may choose to file what they call a 990N, also known as an e-postcard. It's a shorter version of both the 990 and the 990EZ, but still meet the requirements.
Okay, and let's talk dates for a minute. What is the return due to the IRS? When? Sorry, not what, when?
It again depends on the end of your fiscal year, and that varies for most nonprofits. So your return is due on the 15th day of the 5th month after your organization's year end. Not a simple April 15th.
Right.
So for example, our organization's fiscal year end is June 30th. So our 990 then is due on or before November 15th.
So did that date, because I know last year, like with personal income taxes, the date got moved back. Did those dates due to COVID, did those get moved back and moved around last year too?
No, you can file an extension, 6 months, no questions asked, without showing any cause. You can file what they call a IRS Form 8868, which is an application for extension of time to file your exempt organization return. So using the example I just previously mentioned, our fiscal year end is June 30th. Our typical filing date would be November 15th. So if we file the extension on or before November 15th, then our new due date is May 15th.
Okay, that makes sense. So organizations get up and running and doggone it, they just miss things. So what happens if an organization fails to file?
There are penalties for late filing. So if you know you're going to not make that November 15th deadline, if your fiscal year end is June 30th, file that extension, and then you have until May 15th. If you repeatedly not file year after year, I think after 3 consecutive years, then you have the chance to have your nonprofit revoked. So
is there like,
can't make the deadline.
yeah. is it like a percentage, like the penalty, or is it a flat rate, or?
I don't think it's a flat rate. I'm not sure what the penalty is, or if they assess it after your returns filed.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
we've never had to see. Seems like we've always made our deadlines. But yes, penalties and interest. So.
Okay. And so this might be probably the biggest question is, how does an organization choose a tax return preparer?
There are several reputable CPA firms out there that specialize in nonprofit exempt organization tax. There's too many to list. If you are in need of one or need a recommendation, I'll drop my contact information in the chat box. We have one that we use. I know of several other ones. I would be glad to put you in touch with one. It's a daunting return if you file the full 990. So if you're not used to filing that type of form, I'm sure there's a tax preparer out there who's willing to help. So sure. Even if this is their busy time of year.
Right. And that's like, you could even call and like do a little interview with a firm as well, right? And tell them like what you expect and what kind of organization you are, and just kind of get a feel for it that way too, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it depends on your revenue stream too. You know, there's requirements and forms that are required if you receive federal funding, federal and state funding. You know, there's so many different components to the 990 that if you're unsure about it, just give them a call and just say, this is our first time filing. This is how our organization receives our revenue, and our expenses are about this much, because most of the time you have that idea once your fiscal year ends based on the financial statements that you prepare internally. And then that's what they'll use then to prepare your 990, along with a questionnaire. And there's resources out there on the internet if you want to solicit a few different CPA firms and then just kind of get an idea or a bid. You know, maybe your organization is required to get a bid if the expense of the tax return is going to be so much. So there's resources out there that you can, or templates that you can make doable to your organization and then send it to the CPA firms so that you can have a interview set up. So.
Okay, it sounds to me like the calendar is your friend when you're doing this. Make sure you keep track of those dates.
Always. It's the accounting field. What date do I have next?
Yeah, I understand that. Katrina and I work together long enough that I know that she is the taskmaster and she knows the dates, everything. So the calendar is your friend. Just remember that, folks. And she dropped her email in there, and there was one other thing I was going to ask you and it left my brain. I was telling Katrina I had internet problems before I came on, so I was a little frazzled about it. But yeah, so thank you. Oh, I did remember. This was just a little bit of an overview. We don't, like Katrina said, get a hold of someone. This is not like what you should do. This is just some basic guidelines for not-for-profits and how it differs. So don't take this as we're your tax folks. Find someone to do that for you. We just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview because Katrina's been doing this for so long that she understands what not-for-profits go through with tax season. So thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate all the information, and everyone have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.